Hello, I'm Jessa and welcome to Pathfinders. In light of recent interviews, including the one on 60 Minutes Australia, where several women have come forward about sexual assault in the military, we have decided to re-release this episode right here on YouTube with the video footage. Although the video footage wasn't originally intended to be released, we hope that by sharing it here, we can reach more people and spread awareness, but it also serves as a testament to all the women who continue to come forward and speak out. Colleen's story and her voice deserves to be seen and heard, just like all the other women who have been through similar experiences. Because what is it really like to be a woman in the military? Colleen Maclean is a veteran who has served in the Australian Air Force for 10 years. In this episode, she speaks with incredible honesty and truth about what it's really like to be a woman in the military. Not just the pride and all the positive experiences, but also the discrimination and the trauma, including her experience with sexual assault and PTSD. She also shares how she then reclaimed her femininity and found her identity as a veteran. If you're listening today and you know that certain parts of this conversation might be hard to hear, please feel free to pause or to come back or to skip this one entirely. But if you do choose to stay, I think you'll find Colleen's voice just as powerful, inspiring and necessary as I found it. So without further ado, let's dive into the episode. And if it speaks to you, please like, subscribe, share or leave a comment so more people can see the episode. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and I'm just so curious what you have to say. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm so excited to have this chat with you today and talk about all the things.
Awesome, thank you. So today I'd like to focus a bit on your experience in the military and how that shaped what you're doing right now and also who you've become. For the people who don't know you, can you tell a bit about your time in the military, like how long you served and in what area?
Sure. So I actually joined the Air Force straight out of high school. So I was 17 when I joined, and I went straight in initially as a gap year. So they sign you up for 12 months and that's all you have to serve for, and then you can leave after the 12 months. It's kind of like a taster program for the military. I chose to stay on in the military and I signed up for a further 6 years being an aeronautical life support fitter. So all up, I ended up doing 10 years, 9 of those as an aeronautical life support fitter, and worked on a bunch of different aircraft types. And also I deployed to the Middle East and to border protection operation within Australia as well, and in Malaysia. I was medically discharged in 2019. And since then, I've kind of done a bit of everything. But yeah, that's kind of my military service, was that 10 years, yeah.
What made you want to join the Army?
Well, the Air Force. So I joined the Air Force because it was always something that I was really interested in. I loved planes. My great-grandmother was actually a women's auxiliary Air Force. She was a driver to a lot of the higher-ups within the Air Force during World War II. And I saw her march every single Anzac Day, and she was such a proud woman. She was so brilliant and strong, and I just loved her. She was just such a great inspiration to me. And when I joined the military, she was so proud to have another female in the family who jumped into the Air Force. And it was so awesome to come back from my recruit training and share my stories with her. And yeah, it was really good to share that with her.
Yeah, that sounds like a really bonding experience.
Yay.
So when you first joined the Air Force, you first said, like you said, 12 months and then you extended it. What did that look like? Like, did you already have a lot of responsibility early on, or what were your tasks at the beginning?
So within that first 12 months, we just, I guess, looked around. We were taken to different bases and shown different aspects of the military. And that was kind of our role. We did get farmed out to different units within the last 4 months of that 12-month period. And in that time, I was working in a logistics section, so doing stock takes and ordering different equipment and parts and things. Over the next, 9 years when I was an aeronautical life support fitter, that's when I had a lot of responsibility put onto me. So as an aeronautical life support fitter, we maintained safety and survival equipment. So that could be anything from parachutes to oxygen masks, life rafts, life jackets, fire extinguishers, like anything that really is going to be needed in an emergency situation within an aircraft, or worn by aircrew. So really, if everything went wrong with an aircraft and it needed to crash or land unexpectedly, or something happened at altitude and they needed to put on oxygen masks and things like that, that's when the stuff that I maintained came into play. So really, at a really young age, I had the lives of aircrew in my hands. So that was at 17, 18 years old. I was responsible for the lives of, at that stage, it was about 310 aircrew that my section actually maintained the equipment for, and about 10 different aircraft as well. So quite a number of people that were reliant on our stuff.
Do you remember how you experienced that? Because that's such a young age to have such a big responsibility. Like, what was it like for you?
I had so much pride in it. I really was so proud to say that, you know, this is my job. It was so awe-inspiring. But there was a little bit of that, I guess, anxiety in the pit of my stomach, especially when we were on deployments and on operations where they were flying over dangerous territory, where you're like, oh, if something goes wrong, you're waiting, 10, 12 hours for the aircraft to return, hoping that everything goes well and there was no issues. Because really, we had no contact with the aircraft until they made it back to I guess the airport that we were working through. Yeah, so it was really one of those, like, you hope, fingers crossed, that everything goes well. But it was a lot of pride, a lot of anxiety, all mixed into one, a lot of mixed emotions.
Yeah, because do they teach you tools, or like how does that work in the Air Force? Because of course you need to know how it works with the actual equipment, but do they also give you exercises or training in more of the mental aspect of it?
Back then, no. There wasn't a lot of emphasis on mental health and, I guess, down regulation. A lot of that sort of stuff you were just expected to learn off your own back. No one kind of sat you down and you didn't do courses in breathing exercises or stress management or anything like that. You were just expected to, I guess, the training that you do is rinse and repeat. Like, you've done the work so many times, or you've done the task or the action so many times over and over again that you're expected just to know how to do it. And we have procedures and like basically like step-by-step procedures on how to maintain things, and different checks and balances that we have to do before something is signed off as airworthy. So there's a lot of things that go into maintaining aeronautical product, that the only things that get fitted to the aircraft are stuff that have gone through all of the airworthiness checks. But having said that, doesn't really alleviate that, like, oh, what if something happens? I didn't learn stress management techniques until well into my career, and that was more me learning myself and going and seeking a psychologist to actually work through some of that anxiety and learn those tools and those techniques to down-regulate. But it's definitely something that I really didn't work at until, well, God, probably the last maybe 2-3 years is when I've really come into that space of learning and using those tools on a regular basis and really like honing into that down regulation. So yeah, it was really interesting that we're in such a high tempo environment, in such a high stakes environment, that no one kind of tells you how to manage your stress levels. They're just like,
exactly,
just get on with it.
Yeah, just deal with it. And
deal with it. Fine.
Yeah, because it also makes me wonder, it's not just the anxiety of the responsibility that comes with it, or like, what if it goes wrong, but it's also you're a female in a male dominated area. What was your team like? Like, were you one of the few women who were there, or how was it divided?
Yeah, so when I initially joined as a life support fitter, there was around about 170 life support fitters across Australia. And of those 170, 14 were female. And no females were above the rank of corporal at that stage. So I came into a very male-dominated environment. There was, just a handful of us. My first posting was 25 members in the section and 5 females, 2 of which only worked part-time. That was really tough as well because we were always split up on different shifts or whatever. So it's not like you had female company all the time. You're always around the boys. It did take a toll on me because I was so young and I was thrust into this male-dominated environment. I didn't really know how to hold myself. I didn't know how to be feminine and female in those environments because a lot of the time I wanted to hide the fact that I was female because there was a stigma around it of weakness. That if you showed any emotion, if you showed any perceived weakness, especially as a female, it was almost seen as 10 times worse than the guys. And you always had to work twice as hard as the men to prove that you were meant to be there and that you could do the job. Later in my career, it definitely, I guess, changed a little bit. But there were still comments thrown around like, oh, you only got that because you're a female, or, you didn't actually earn your promotion. You only got it because they needed a female to be promoted and all of this kind of stuff. So it was like, it didn't matter how hard you worked for something. It was still comments made around whether you actually earned it or whether you slept your way to the top. Which is really hard when you're putting in the work and you've done everything to actually earn something, and then it's belittled in a way like that.
Yeah, you're not being seen or recognized for all the effort you're putting in.
Yeah, 100%. And then there's those other layers of being a female in defense where you get a lot of unwanted attention from men. I got a lot of, I guess, unwanted attention because I'm a conventionally attractive young female. And people would try and, I guess, hit on me. I remember doing some mundane task in the office and I had like 2 or 3 people come up to me and ask me out on dates within the span of like half an hour. And I'm like, I can't even do the lemonading without people coming up and trying to hit on me. So it's like no peace there. I also, I was a victim of sexual harassment and sexual assault while I was at the hands of men who were in the military. And that really rocked me as well. And it changed my outlook on being a female. And it really made me want to hide the fact that I was female. So, I would put on my uniform and I would hold myself differently. I would be hypermasculine. The way I spoke was more hypermasculine. I just presented myself as more of a masculine female than, I guess, the person that you see now. I never wore makeup. I never did anything to draw attention to myself in that way. And I really lost my connection to my femininity and my sexuality and my sensuality of just, being a woman. And it really changed the way I viewed myself. And I've had to do a lot of work in undoing that, in undoing the wanting to hide myself, which has been really interesting, especially over the last 5 or 6 years since I'm discharged, and what I've kind of gone into post-discharge with my modelling and things like that, like just these hyper-feminist situations.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of the times when people talk about the military, they talk about, or if they think of values, they think of brotherhood and being this really tight team that whatever happens, we got your back, like stuff like that. But as a woman, it sounds like that's not the experience at all. Yeah, could you say more about that? Like, what are some common misconceptions people can have, or like values that apply to the men but not the women?
Yeah, I guess my experience, and that's what I can talk about, is my experience within the military. And it's definitely, there was this element of the boys' club where you always felt like an outsider. It didn't matter how good of friends you were with the guys, you always were the other. It was always an us and them situation. And I find that really, like, it stings a bit because you've gone through the same training, you've had to keep the same standards, pretty much the same standards of fitness and health and all of that kind of stuff. So to be kind of made an outer, like, that us and them kind of situation, it stings because you're like, I've done all this work, I've tried so hard, and I'm still, like, not good enough to be one of the boys or even be referred to as one of the boys. I definitely think that from my experience, not all of the people that I encountered, not all of the men that I encountered were like that. I have some extremely close friendships with men who I served with, they're just some of my closest relationships, and I cherish them so much. There is definitely, I think, this stigma that still exists, and it's this legacy of, like, when they finally let women into the military, and it's just like, it feels like 50 years behind what the rest of the population is at, you know. Finally let women into the combat corps, in the 2010s, was when they finally actually let women into the combat corps. So even in this really, I guess, near past, there's still things that feel so archaic. And I think that's the word, is like archaic about the military. And that's definitely not to say that things haven't changed, because, you know, it has been 6 years since I left, and I joined in 2009. So we're looking at, 15 odd years ago.
I mean, hopefully things have shifted a bit, but I think, like, you are right about certain processes. They're probably still behind, or it's not like how a woman would feel perfectly safe or would have the same chances as a man. Yes. And would it be okay if I asked you questions about the sexual assault?
Yep.
Like, when that happened, did you have the chance to share that with someone or to talk about that?
To be honest, no. I actually hid it for a really long time. I didn't speak about it until, it was probably 6 years later that I first actually spoke about it to a psychologist. And I spoke about the experiences not as sexual assault, because for myself, for some reason, I guess it was my safety blanket, or how I was protecting myself from it, was my brain didn't reconcile that what had happened to me was sexual assault, because it was like a protective barrier for me. So when my psychologist at the time recited it back to me and said, "Do you understand that this is what this is?" I was like absolutely distraught. I guess I knew somewhere deep down that that's what had happened to me, that what this was sexual assault, was rape. It was almost like I'd withdrawn into like a childlike mindset of like, that can't have happened to me. That happens to other people. I don't want to deal with that, so I'll just shut it away. I just won't speak about it. But it affected me. Like my body, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and my body reacted. I didn't know what it was, but I remember having my very first panic attack. I was triggered by something. Someone touched me, and I got really triggered by it. And I had my first panic attack, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. I hadn't figured out what panic attacks actually were. And, this is when I'm like 18, 19. And it's not till, much later that I look back and go, oh, that was a panic attack. You were triggered by this situation, and you've had a panic attack, and that's what that was. hindsight, I guess 2020 and all that. But like, yeah, it was really interesting. I didn't share my experiences with anyone. I didn't report anything like that. So, for me, it's been quite recent that I've actually started diving into that trauma and working through it and really, like, I guess, processing what had happened.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, because that is something really vulnerable to say. And as you were saying that, I was also thinking that because you were in an environment where there was not really a way out, maybe keeping it out of your mind was the way to keep going with the tasks at hand. Because I can imagine that it felt very unsafe to then still be with the same people every day. How did that affect like the next years you spent in the Air Force?
I definitely closed myself off really to forming connections, especially with the men in my sections. I really put up like this wall, and I wouldn't associate with them outside of work. And if I did, it was really, I guess, minimal. And I almost like, I was the bitch. Let's put it that way. I was the bitch. I wouldn't be friends with anyone. I wouldn't joke with anyone. I really closed myself up and shut myself down to a lot of people who were in my vicinity. There was a few guys who I guess slipped through who showed me that I could trust them. We built that trust and that mutual respect, and I definitely have really close friendships with men throughout my defense career. But it was definitely like I almost ostracized myself to protect myself, a way of protecting myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, that really did affect a lot of, I guess, my relationships, my working relationships as well, because, if I'm got my guard up constantly, I'm constantly defensive, I'm constantly reactive because, I'm on guard and I'm ready. I'm basically in fight or flight mode constantly at work. You can imagine how that would affect working relationships.
Yeah.
You can't have working relationships if someone's always ready to fight.
Yeah. Because you said like at some point you realized that you had a panic attack, that you could like label things that before you kind of didn't know what to do with or how to label. What made you seek help in the end? Like what were some of the, maybe symptoms is a bit of a negative word, but like some of the signs that helped you realize or made you feel like, okay, I want to seek help with it?
Yeah. I started to self-harm. So I started cutting myself, and that was almost the rock bottom for me was, okay, I'm actually now hurting myself to be able to cope with the stress and the depression and anxiety around that. And from what I know now, like PTSD that I had gotten from those situations. That was when I started to reach out, when I would stop at the gate to go onto base where you have to show your ID, and I would just start crying. And I'd be showing my ID and I'd just be crying as I'm like driving through the gate because I didn't want to be at work. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to see people. Like I just wanted to curl up in a ball and never come out. So that was when I was like, these things, I need help. And it was also my sister saw me where I would go to her and I would see her regularly and I'd just be in tears and I'd just be sitting there going, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't think I can do this. And I almost called it quits and discharged, voluntary left the Defence Force so many times within that early days. I'd thought, I'd been told that I wasn't fit for the Defence Force because I was this really abrasive personality, because I was just defensive all the time. And I kept getting told that over and over again. So I was like, well, maybe they're right. Like maybe it is that I'm just not fit for the military. But it turns out that like once I actually started seeking help and I started working through some stuff, I started to not be so defensive all the time and on guard all the time, and I could actually form relationships and have better working relationships with the people around me. Yeah, I was always good at my job. I was always good at the hands-on part of my job. I was always really great at that, just not good at the people. So now I could actually be really good at my job and really good at the people. And from doing that work, I actually earned myself a promotion. So I promoted towards the end of my career, I promoted to corporal, and I started actually being one of the people who ran a section of life support fitters. So, you know, I was actually able to work through some shit and get out the other side and actually be a decent manager too, which I've now, I guess, working on and building upon all those skills. I'm now at a point where I'm able to go into those roles and manage people, and yeah, it's been really, really interesting seeing that evolution.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you mentioned you have PTSD. How do you experience it differently now compared to maybe when you were first medically discharged or when you were still in the military? Like, has your experience of PTSD changed, or the symptoms you have of that?
Yeah. So I didn't actually know that I had PTSD. I've only just recently been diagnosed with PTSD. So, you know, looking back, I didn't know my triggers. Now I do. Now I know what my PTSD was from and how I'm triggered and all of that kind of stuff. So back then, you know, I didn't know my triggers. So I would be having these full body visceral reactions, like feeling like my heart was constricted, like heart palpitations, my chest was constricted, you know, sweating, like shortness of breath, just involuntary crying, and really, and you know, also having these really depressive episodes where I would feel suicidal, and after being really heightened and really triggered, I would go into these really, really deep slumps and not want to get out of bed and not want to do anything. So yeah, like I guess looking back there, you know, they were really quite significant reactions to things.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with PTSD just last year. And since then, working with psychologists and psychiatrists, and actually doing a 6-week residential stay at a mental health treatment facility down in Byron Bay. Through going through that, I've now come out the other end, and I would say I'm a completely different person to what I was. You know, I'm so much more, I'm better equipped at dealing with my triggers and being able to spot triggers before they become something that really flares my PTSD up. Yeah, so it's not something that I've completely, I guess, moved on from, but it's definitely like I now know my triggers, I know how they affect me, and I've got tools and things in place that help me to manage that. So help me down regulate and calm myself down. And, you know, being able to get good medical help with psychiatry and medication to be able to help those, I guess, really high highs and low lows that comes with depression, anxiety, and PTSD has definitely helped as well. I've been able to become very stable, and just the whole thing has been life-changing, to be honest.
I'm so happy for you that like you now have all these insights and tools, and I think it's so brave that you sought help for this, because I think especially coming from the military, I don't think mental health is always that high of a priority, or especially as a woman, like you said before, like whenever you do show emotion or you do experience something of like opening yourself up to feelings or whatever, that's something that's not appreciated. And so I think it's really good that you took that step. And yeah, I was just wondering, because you also mentioned that when you were in the military, you kind of made a transition, or when you started opening up, you got a promotion. But you also mentioned that after you got out of the military, things changed as well. How did it feel to be medically discharged and then just to be at home again? Like, how did you make sense of that?
I think I was in a lot of denial probably the first 2 years when I left. I jumped straight into a double degree in business and communications, and I was doing full-time study. So I went straight from the military into full-time study and gave myself no break whatsoever. No time to like chill out, no time to figure out like what's just happened or process what's just happened, with like losing my career and losing my whole identity that was tied to the uniform. So I kind of dived into the first thing, and then I quickly like tried to get whatever work was presented to me. So I started working in a gym, and then that only lasted like 3 months because it wasn't what I wanted to do. And then, I just couldn't find my feet. It wasn't until 2020 and a friend of mine who is my tattoo artist, she reached out to me and she was like, hey, I'd love to chat about you doing some work for me. And I was like, cool. Sounds like a plan, like let's have a chat. And I jumped in with her and started doing her social media management, doing a bit of sales stuff for her. And then that evolved again into, I guess, project management for her. And that evolved again into PR and comms and digital marketing and a whole bunch of different things. I got so much out of that. But it definitely, I was in denial about how affected I was by the loss of my identity. I definitely tried a lot of things. I started modeling and, I really enjoyed that and I loved that, and that was my creative outlet. I dyed my hair rainbow colors and I would immerse myself in the creative culture that was in Brisbane at the time, and like definitely just did everything that I could that was so separate to what the military was. For the first 2 years, I didn't even tell people that I met that I was a veteran. I didn't even associate myself with that word. I was like, yeah, I'm ex-military, but like I'm not a veteran. Because a veteran is someone who's been to war and that's how my brain reconciled it. I was like, that's not me. I'm not a person who went to World War I, World War II. That is what I saw as a veteran. And I also didn't see myself as a woman depicted within veteran spaces either. So, but for a good length of time, I didn't even talk about the military. I didn't tell anyone I was in the military. And I can't even remember what sparked me to actually start talking about it. But I think it was some kind of unrest. It might have been the stuff that was happening in Ukraine at the time. And there was a lot of questions about, the Australians sending help and aid over to the Ukrainians. And I think that's what actually sparked me to start talking about my experience in the military and share, I guess, a little bit of background about what it's like to serve your country and the pride that comes behind that. And there was a whole bunch of stuff that kind of came up in conversations around that. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a part of my identity I hadn't touched. And I had like blocked out. I was around about the same time that I started applying for full-time roles. And I'd been trying to get into marketing and entry-level jobs in marketing and stuff because, I was studying a business and comms degree. So I was really trying really hard to get into those jobs and I wasn't getting anywhere. And this job popped up and I thought nothing of it and I just sent my resume in, and it was actually with a veteran support organisation called Mates for Mates. And it was to be a online liaison officer. So I created and facilitated social connection activities for veterans and their families in the online space, so via Zoom.
Wow.
That's when I actually started to process my transition, was when I was actually surrounded by other veterans going through transition or having transitioned and going through their healing journeys. that I started to be like, oh, maybe I should look at myself and turn the mirror inwards and go, it's time to actually start processing the loss and the grief that comes with leaving defense. And it definitely, like, I actually started to refer to myself as a veteran again. And I definitely, like, that then became part of my identity once again.
Yeah.
Something that I had shut down and pushed away from and really, like, wanted nothing to do with actually started to become a really significant part of me. And you know, it is a significant part of my story. And I actually started talking about it and telling that story, which was really, really powerful for me.
Yeah, because it sounds like before, when you didn't want to use the word veteran, the reason for that was because it became clear that you weren't in the military anymore, or like you had to accept that you were actually a veteran.
Yeah.
And I love how you shared that when you were in the military, it was part of your identity, or maybe it was your whole identity. But now that you're out of the military, it's still part of your identity, but just in a different way. Like it's a part of your story. Because I was wondering that as well. Like, what are some of the like good skills or certain parts of the military that you really enjoyed, or that you feel like you can still include in your life as it is now?
Yeah. There's so many things that the military taught me really have served me so well now that I'm a civilian, now that I'm out. And things like having the confidence to be able to speak up, the integrity that defense taught me, discipline, the resilience that I learned through all of those experiences have really shaped how I actually am as a person now. And it's lent itself to me being able to go into hobbies like my hobby of bodybuilding, or, you know, that part of my identity of bodybuilding. The discipline, the integrity, and the resilience are fundamental in that sport. Those things have really helped me. Those things I learned within the military really helped me to be successful in that sport. And also being able to, you know, just the small things like show up on time for work, being well presented, having a pride in your appearance, making your bed in the morning, and those kind of things, like those simple things that the military teaches you in recruits, that you kind of carry on through your entire life without even thinking about it. You know, there's a joke that we make, you have to fold your socks a certain way in recruits and they have to have a smile. You know, that there's a lot of people who still have smiley socks who are veterans, because some of those things, those habits die really hard. Like some of those things never leave you. But yeah, I would say the main things that defense taught me that I'm so thankful for, and I still have a lot of in my life, is that discipline, the integrity, and the resilience.
What would you like, for example, if we take the part of the discipline, do you have certain tools, or like what helps you to stay disciplined? I mean, that's kind of a big question, but
it is a big question. I set goals. And it's almost like I set goals and then I set like action tasks to be able to achieve those goals. So, for example, something like I would like to compete in my next bodybuilding show in April 2026. So in order for me to get to that point, I have like mini goals in that. So I've got my coach and he sets me my programs, like my training programs and my nutritional programs and everything like that. So every day I have my food. I need to stick to my food. Every day I have a certain amount of water that I need to drink. I have to get in a certain amount of steps. Every day I have to get in so many sessions per week, so 5 sessions a week at the gym, and I have to get my 8 hours of sleep every day. So they're like my everyday non-negotiables. So for me, it's like I've got my goal as my point in which I'm working towards, and that keeps me disciplined because I've put it out into the universe. I've kept myself accountable by telling other people and by paying a coach and by setting those goals with my coach. So then I have to hit those, I guess, mini goals or those tasks, those actionable tasks every single day, and become consistent. And that's kind of where it is. And as you go along and as you keep ticking those boxes every single day and you build that consistency, you start to trust yourself a lot more and you start to become a lot more, I guess, self-reliant. It comes into integrity too. You have trust in yourself and your integrity to be able to do those things every single day. And as that kind of grows, your self-confidence grows, your self-worth grows, and you can really, you yourself become a more happy, purpose-driven individual because you trust yourself. You know you're going to keep ticking along and get those things done. And if, for whatever reason, one day you don't quite get all those, you trust yourself that the next day it's on again. Like you're starting again and you're going to get it and you're going to tick those boxes, and it's just getting back up, resilience in that respect, like getting back up and doing it again and trying again.
Yeah.
Even if you fail, even if you don't quite get there, or you miss certain parts of the day, like you don't get your steps in, the next day you either make it up or you hit those steps consistently moving forward. So they all kind of tie into each other.
Yeah.
Because as you keep ticking those boxes and you build on that discipline, you start building your integrity and your self-worth and self-confidence that comes with integrity, and then your resilience as well. So if you fall off the bandwagon, jump back on, keep going the next day. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it. I like setting goals and working towards something has always been my thing that has driven me. I've always needed something to work towards, or I find that I lose focus and drive.
Yeah. This question may seem a bit directed, but I'm curious, do you think, because the military is a really manly dominated environment, bodybuilding is also something that isn't very typically for a woman to do. Do you think there's like some relation between that experience and also the assault you experienced and you going into bodybuilding now?
I reckon there probably is, to be honest. When I look at bodybuilding, it's this juxtaposition, and this is the way I kind of see myself now, is this juxtaposition of something that is strong and what the society would consider masculine, juxtaposed against something that is so feminine in the way that we move. We wear high heels, glittery bikinis, you can have your makeup and your hair done, and you're posing. So it's like, it's this yin and yang almost with bodybuilding, especially in my category of being figure. Like we're very muscular and what society would dictate as masculine, but we're also very feminine, and we've got a lot of flow, and we need a lot of femininity to be able to move the way that we need to be able to move to be successful. So for me, it's like, maybe it is a little bit of that. I'm trying to go back into, I guess, that military mindset where I'd put on the uniform and be hyper masculine, but I'm trying to balance it out now with the flow and the beauty of bodybuilding when it comes to that feminine side of it. I love being able to get dressed up and have my makeup and hair done and, strut around in my glittery bikini on stage in my high heels and pose, and it's so empowering. And I almost because it's almost this act of like taking back my femininity from all those years of not feeling feminine or not allowing myself to be feminine. I'm like taking it back now, and I'm going to display it to the world. I'm going to strut around on a stage. They're usually televised to like hundreds of thousands of people, and I'm taking back that femininity, and I'm going to show you that I can be feminine and strong, and I can be both. I don't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And that's also exactly the question I wanted to ask is like, do you feel like bodybuilding is actually helping you embrace your full femininity, and that it doesn't have to be like this typical, stereotypical way of how a woman should be, but that actually by displaying yourself with the high heels and the makeup and everything, you are actually fully being a female.
Yeah.
And the thing you said before as well, like when you did have the assault, that you tried to hide the feminine side of yourself, and now the bodybuilding is actually opening that door again. Is that
Yeah.
kind of a right conclusion?
Yeah, I think it really is. I never really thought about it when I first started out bodybuilding, but since kind of really diving into it, and I've been doing it now for about 3 years, it definitely is that. It's really taking back that power of, like women can have muscles and women can be strong. And, like some of my childhood idols were like Xena Warrior Princess and Sarah Connor from Terminator, and these really strong, powerful, muscular female characters who kicked ass, to be honest. And that's kind of what I see myself with bodybuilding is like, they were super feminine and they like were just badass. They were absolutely badass chicks. And I see myself in that with bodybuilding. And it's also my body with the sexual assaults and stuff. I didn't feel like my body was my own. And by working out, by building muscle, by really seeing the way that my body changes with the seasons within bodybuilding, like with my build seasons and my prep and all of that, it's almost like I'm regaining control and regaining my power in my body again, and regaining myself, that this is mine and nobody else gets to touch or talk about it, or has control over it. No one gets to dictate to me what I do with my body. It's mine. So I think that's been a really powerful part of it that I really probably didn't think about too much when I first started, but since being a few years in now, I'm like, this is mine. I get to do what I want with it. It's no one else's. No one controls it. No one gets to dictate to me what I do with it. I can build, giant muscles and lift heavy things and be a strong, powerful female. So
it's like you have your autonomy back.
Yeah, definitely. The autonomy, having been taken away from me, I guess, as well by signing on to the military, a lot of your autonomy is taken away from you, or you don't have a lot of power of choice. You still have some power of choice. You choose to be there or you can choose to leave, right? But if you choose to stay, a lot of the choice is taken away from you. So having my own bodily autonomy has been so powerful in so many ways.
Yeah. We've come almost already to the end of the episode, sadly.
Goodness.
The time flew by. What if you could talk to women who are now in the military and who experience the same kind of abuse or the same kind of teasing or not feeling recognized or seen, or maybe even women who feel unsafe, who've experienced things like yourself that made them feel very unsafe? What kind of advice would you give to those kind of people?
To me, I always wanted to tell, and what I would say to my younger self is probably to trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, if something is making you uncomfortable, your body knows. Right? It's that pit in your stomach. It's the feeling in your chest that something doesn't feel right. Trust your gut and find someone who's safe and talk to them about it. Seek help. So reach out to mental health practitioners and seek help and talk to them about what you're feeling, and just trust yourself. Trust that you know what's right for you and what's best for you. No one else knows what's going on in here or in your body. No one else knows. You're the person who knows best for your body. So trust yourself and advocate. And I think that's the biggest thing, is advocate for yourself. Speak up for yourself. If you don't feel like you can, then find someone who you trust to help you with that, to speak on your behalf. There's many organisations who support women who have been sexually assaulted or been victims of sexual violence who can help you, find help, to speak up for yourself, to advocate for you on your behalf. And I think it's reaching out to those organisations and knowing that you're safe within those organisations. My lights just died too.
You're good. Thank you for sharing that.
That's all right.
So we end each episode with fire away questions. And that's basically, I ask you a couple of questions and just whatever answer pops up first is your answer. There's no right or wrong. It's just fire away. So the first question is, what is one small daily habit that has improved your mental well-being?
I think it is movement, whatever that looks like, whether it's walking or in the gym or, like skateboarding. For me, movement has been the one thing that has completely changed my life, and making sure that I do that at a minimum every single day.
What is a book or a movie you would recommend everyone to read or watch, and why?
Oh, this one's a tough one because I could go a few different ways. My favorite book in the whole wide world that had a hugely profound impact on me was a book called The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. And it is a beautiful take on the afterlife and what happens after death. And it really changed my way I looked at connections and moments in time, and almost these sliding door moment within life, and how a simple moment with someone could have a really significant impact on them. That book really had a massively profound impact on me, and I think I've read it like 20 times now, and I recommend it to everyone. So yeah, 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom is my go-to.
It sounds really interesting. I'm going to look it up later. Thank you.
Yeah.
What is one piece of advice you would give young adults who are feeling overwhelmed by the pressures and uncertainties of life?
I think it comes back to knowing your intuition, trusting your gut, and knowing that you know what's best for you. If you're feeling overwhelmed, doing things that help to release that overwhelm. So whether that's asking for help, which was something that I found really challenging, was actually asking for help from people. So asking for help, reaching out to someone you trust and who you feel comfortable enough speaking about whatever it is that is making you feel overwhelmed or uncomfortable. But trust your intuition. You know in yourself like what's right and wrong and what feels right and wrong for you. And I guess it's just building that trust within yourself. But ask for help. Reaching out to someone you trust and asking for help has really helped me, and I wish I had done that a lot earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that is a really good piece of advice. What is a good piece of advice that someone else ever gave you that has stuck with you?
And this could go a lot of different ways. A lot of different ways too. This one's a tough one. Yeah. Not sure about this one.
I mean, it can also just be, it doesn't have to be literal advice, but it can just be like maybe someone that changed the way you think about something or the way you experience life.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's only happened just recently, but I was working with a beautiful yoga instructor when I was in Byron, and she kind of spoke about this concept of the 2 arrows. And think of the 2 arrows as thoughts that pop into your head. And the first one hits you and you just kind of have to say like, no, not now. Take it out and it's fine. When the second one hits you, that's when I guess the thought that crosses your mind gets the story attached to it. So it could be like a triggering memory or something that's crossed your mind, which is the first arrow. And you go, don't want to deal with that right now. I don't want to process that. Take it out. And then the second arrow hits. And that's when you might start attaching a story to it. So that could be that I'm not enough. I'm not lovable. This happened to me because I'm a bad person or whatever it is. But it's about like taking that second arrow out and being like, no, not right now. I will come back to this. Yes, I will process this, but not right now. I'm not going to attach any stories to it. And I think that's what it is. It's like, you can have thoughts that come in, and especially like when you're doing something like driving or whatever, and a thought will pop into your head. And then you start thinking about it, and then you start spiraling into it, and you're like, oh my God. And then you start, really like feeling all of these feelings that come up because of this story that you've attached to this thought. If you had just gone, no, not right now. Just not right now. Take that arrow out. Not right now. Then
I love that. Because then you kind of park it to the side and be like, I'm going to come back to you, but not now.
Yeah, and you're acknowledging it. You're acknowledging that you've had the thought. You're acknowledging yourself, that part of you that's obviously, brought that up for you. You acknowledge it. You're like, yes, I see you, but not right now. And I think what it comes down to is speaking to yourself kindly and compassionately, like you would a child, is, I see you. You are heard, but just not right now. So the most powerful piece of, I guess, advice that I've gotten, and that's only been, really recently.
Yeah, it's really inspiring. Yeah. The last question is, if you had to describe in one sentence what you hope to give to this world, what would that be?
I hope to leave it better than what I found it. I hope that my impact definitely leaves people and the world better than what I found it.
Thank you so much for this conversation. It has really just inspired me. I think you're so powerful and just brave for speaking up about this. And I think it is going to inspire a lot of other people as well, not just people who have been in the military, but just people in general who can recognize their own experience in your experience. And I just want to say thank you for everything you shared and for your time and your vulnerability. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been amazing. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And also shout out to Ruth Claire for connecting us.
Yay! Shout out to Ruth.
If Colleen's story resonated with you, I hope you share this episode with others. Also feel free to like or subscribe or leave a comment so more people can see it as well. If you want more of our previous episodes to be released, please let me know which ones you want out there as well, and I will try to put future episodes on here, so be ready for a new one.